What's up, y'all? I'm happy to say that after taking a few months off, the Find the Others podcast is firing back up with some new episodes. So, we're going to kick things off with my guest today, Edward Crowe. And among many other things, Edward's an underground psychedelic facilitator who hosts these 9-gram mushroom ceremonies out in the forest. Edward shares his experience doing this kind of work and talks about how important intention and respect are for such a powerful journey. Reverence for the mushrooms is a big theme throughout this conversation, and we also get into the role of music, ancestral connections, and leaning into the mystery of it all. This was actually the first time I'd done what felt like a blind date of a podcast. We were connected through a mutual friend of ours, Dennis, aka Micropreneur, who I've also talked to on this podcast before, and I think it turned out great. So enjoy this episode of Find the Others with Edward Crowe. Yeah, I trust Dennis when it comes to his recommendations on anything. So when he told me to hit you up, man, like I got to take his word for it. So I'm excited. I heard a little bit about what you do when we talked on the phone. So yeah, I want to kind of get into that, man. So how would you explain like some of that work that you do?
So I do high dose ceremonial psilocybin work, and I do it very privately. It's like a very private setting. I don't do retreats. I don't charge anybody anything. I kind of do when people are curious and want to take this journey. You know, friends of mine, more or less, they come to me, and sometimes if they've never done it before, I'll usually sit for them first. I'll look the other direction. I might smoke some cannabis and meditate, and just completely leave that space to them. It's all about the person there, right? And if they make it through that and it feels like they want to come back and everything went well, then I would join them on the next trip, right? But I like to know this thing takes you really, really deep. I usually start at 9 grams is my bottom dose. And of course, everybody always asks, dried, all this and that. Yes, of course, cracker dry. You know what I mean? Dried mushrooms. If there's two people, then it's 18 grams. You know what I mean? It's 18 in some tea. We boil it, and I like to sit for people, find out where it takes their mind first before I would ever just jump off the porch beside them, because there's not much I can do if I don't know exactly where their mind is going to take them. As you know, this takes you places you may never even know existed. So I approach it in a very ceremonial, respectful way from the very beginning with meditation and intention. I take it very serious. Although it's also very playful. It's a mix of both. But to sum it all up, I take it very, very serious.
Mm, wow. I mean, yeah, especially when you're talking about 9+ grams, like that's double what's considered the like classic heroic dose, the Terrence McKenna. But I know he was probably taking upwards of 8-9 grams, and the only person I really hear about that's like kind of a more well known person is like Clindy Lee.
Hmm.
So it sounds like you probably know about that. So where did you come to that like amount of 9 grams?
Rest in peace, Kalindi. Also, I like to
Yes.
say that he's somebody I always wanted to meet. I never had the opportunity to because, as you mentioned, he seems like a pioneer in a higher dose, realm of all this. And I haven't heard of a lot of people going very high dose, surprisingly. And I think it does have its dangers to it. You have to make sure that everything is completely in control. Like I have a space in the forest where it's one spot every time. There's a lot of variables involved to make that space safe and sacred. And it's very, very intentional. But how did I get to that point? I mean, when way back in the day, I used to sell weed. And, it's probably 20, 25 years ago. And at one point, there was a drought in our city, and nobody could get any weed. And it was like a month, maybe just zero weed. And one of my friends had a couple pounds of mushrooms. And I literally knew nothing. I'd never tried them. I didn't know anything about them. So I got 2 pounds, thinking my whole intention at that time, admittingly, was just to turn a profit, just to see what I could make. And I realized real quick in a couple sales that people buy mushrooms, and that's that on that. You know what I mean? They didn't want to come back. They didn't want another bag. So needless to say, I got stuck with about a pound and a half, and I just started eating them. I mean, over a period of time, and inviting friends over and eating them and experimenting with different movies and setups and over 20, 25 years, it's gotten to a point where now it's ceremonial outside with the fire and symbols and crystals, and it's taken on a very like ritualistic ceremonial approach, and it's all positive. Let me note, it's all very positive. Part of the part of the intention in the passage leading into after the meditation states that it's positive, and at the end of the day, we don't know if this stuff is all within us, just a hallucination within our mind, and we're just wise enough to be able to pick up on these lessons and implement them in reality, or some of us feel as though it's maybe from outside of ourselves, and I personally can't determine. But either way, it's a tremendous medicine for me, my soul, and I feel like it positively affects the people around me. But I
Yeah,
would also
absolutely.
say that Terrence, I know that 5 grams was a hero dose, but Terrence was a legend. Like I bet that Terrence would eat 5 grams, and then eat 5 grams again later that day. So I mean, I don't know that he wouldn't explore those same realms. You know what I mean? I just think that was quote unquote the hero's dose. But as we've heard a lot, Chirera, they've all went and just ate mushrooms continuously for like
Right.
weeks.
Right. Yeah, I think that was his kind of like, if he's gonna go out and tell people to do this, that 5 grams was like the safe, like you're getting that kind of full amount, and the experience that comes with that, but it's like not too crazy, so someone could be reckless with that. And that happens a lot because I feel like that's whole part of this whole like issue with the underground is like people that are reckless with it. Like, yeah, there's a difference between being like courageous and reckless when it comes to this stuff. And you're playing with so much fire. Like this is incredibly powerful. And it sounds like your whole ceremony. It sounds really cool, man. It sounds like it organically just slowly evolved. Was there any like particular experience you had, or was that also just kind of like it evolved over time?
I mean, I had an experience. I've talked about this before, where my mother had bought me a Yoruban tribe shaman's cabinet from a museum that was going out of business in Carthage, Tennessee. Neither one of us had ever heard of the Yoruba tribe. It was just a really cool hand carved cabinet, and she bought it for me for my birthday. They were going out of business. It was a one off. And when I left for Europe for a tour, I put my mushrooms in the cabinet. It's the medicine cabinet. I thought it was appropriate. Had no crazy intentions or anything like that. When I got in the Uber to go to Europe, I met a guy who was driving the Uber, and he, we had small talk or whatever. He asked me where I was from, where I was going, and then when I said, "How about you? Where are you from?" He was driving, and he turned around. And he said, "I'm from a place you may have heard of called Yoruba," and he looked at me like that, and I was like, obviously I didn't go too far into detail with him, but then he said something in the language, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "May God watch over you on your journey." So I asked him if he would say it, I could record it so I could have it. He did. I have it. And then I went to Europe, came back, 3 weeks later, March 13th, 2020, when the whole COVID thing popped off, and came home, and I did a 14-gram trip, and they came out of the cabinet, and at one point I kind of like fell back, and I asked my fiance who was watching over me. She was sitting for me. I asked her, I said, "What is that?" And I meant, what was it I was seeing? And she thought I meant her. She said, "It's just me." But what I saw was, as I laid back, it was the first time that I've ever seen like a hallucination that resembled reality. I mean, verbatim. Like it looked as real as where I'm at right now, right? And I was laying on my back, and I could see up, and I couldn't see my body, but I was surrounded by African tribal people. And they could have been from the future, they could have been from the past. They had on tribal gear, and they loved me and I loved them. And it felt as though I was one of them, and I was either being born or dying. It was that serious of a moment. And I don't know, man. There's just been several times like that, or um, yeah, that I went to other places. And again, I mean, maybe it's in your mind, and it's not outside of yourself, and it's all good either way, because I always come back happier. I want to spread a better message and be a better person to people. So I think regardless of where these ideas, lessons, hallucinations come from, if the outcome is positive, then this is a medicine.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's like even if it's placebo, which I don't believe that it is, but it's like even if it is placebo, the fact that we have the power to like utilize that and get the outcome that we want. Because I think the setting of intentions might be some kind of a placebo, when you're going into a trip. And I always write down, and I tell people to do this too, like 2, 3 intentions. And like clockwork, dude, every time I trip, it comes up. Sometimes it's like immediately. It could be in some way you don't expect. And there's some people who might say that that's basically just like a super placebo. But it's like even if it is, if it works, it works.
I agree. It's yeah, I don't care what I dress it up in, call it, or what outfit it puts on, as long as the benefits and the fruits are worth the labor, then hey, I'll just stay in the mystery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm kind of intrigued by the mystery of it all, and I don't want to figure it out. I just like to continue to coast
Yeah.
through and see what's happening, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one of my biggest things too is like engaging with the mystery. It's like that's my whole spiritual orientation is about that, man. Like it's that curiosity that comes from like encountering the mystery. And that feeling is just like the best feeling. Like I feel like it's maybe one of the most human things is to have that
Absolutely.
curiosity around the mystery. Um,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned like shamans and this tribe and stuff. So like one of the things I was curious to ask you was like, what is your? Because obviously, like an American guy in the forest, you're doing a ceremony, but I don't think you could call that like shamanism in the direct way. Like maybe that like a an ayahuasca healer curandero. There's all types of different names. Some of them don't even want to be called shamans, like curandero. They prefer that kind of stuff. So yeah, what's your relationship to that? Like, have you ever worked with like a South American shaman or someone in one of those more traditional vibes? And like, how do you feel the same or different from that?
First of all, I appreciate the question. I think it's a great question. I operate off intuition, and I don't give this any title. I feel like someone like us are as much of a shaman as we are a rabbi. You know what I mean? It's I would not label myself honestly anything at all. I just go into the forest with friends, and I feel like this medicine that I've got access to helps facilitate healing. And past that, I don't, and I mean this respectfully. I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I don't feel like that it needs a label. You know what I mean? I do these ceremonies, and that's that. You know what I mean? I definitely would never identify as a shaman because I feel like that's a cultural title, like an Indian chief.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Or a
yeah.
rabbi, something like that. You know, it's like, but to answer your question, I did work with a gentleman named Haru from the Kuntanawa tribe on a couple of occasions dealing with ayahuasca. And they were incredible. I mean, the Icaros they sang, they're everything about their tribe is so beautiful and incredible. They actually came to Tennessee. But what I've learned over doing all these experiences and ceremonies and the way it's evolved, I'm called to psilocybin, man. It's like I don't want to say called to, but you know, it's psilocybin seems like what I'm supposed to work with. I've experimented with other things. I've delved out and thought that this was just a psychedelic journey, and then I've come back home and realized I think I'm just meant to be a psilocybin guy. You know what I mean? That's where I feel most comfortable. And I told a tribal leader. I was recently in New Zealand. I told a tribal leader over there who they welcomed us with a haka and a beautiful welcome ceremony. And I got the privilege. They brought us necklaces like over there. If they give you these jade stone necklaces, you don't really want to buy it for yourself. The tradition is it's given to you. So we didn't have them, but we would have loved one. And the tribal leader came and blessed us. One of them came and blessed us with these jade stone necklaces. It's like a piece in New Zealand. And I talked to her about this similar topic, like you know, being a white individual from America, you know, and kind of the way people look at that. Some people don't mind. Some people look at it like you shouldn't be doing certain things. And I explained to her that this is all from my spirit, my soul. You know what I mean? Like intuitively, I feel like doing this. I'm not trying to put on a show. I don't have a billboard or commercial. You know what I mean? This is
Mm-hmm.
just what makes me feel like I'm on track. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it also, when I go out in the world, society and stress gets on all of us. When I go out in the world and that gets on me, the only way I continue to function without getting a chip on my shoulder is coming and communing with these mushrooms. You know, and sometimes I did a journey 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and coming in, I dealt with a whole lot of stress from business and the work. It was just a heavier month than usual. And before I went to New Zealand, I had to come out here and spit that bad energy in the fire. You know what I mean? I had to get it out. I didn't feel right taking that to a foreign land. You know what I mean? It felt the same as if I had the flu and just flew over there like, who cares? You know, I give it to everybody. That's how I felt with that energy. So I got it out, and man, it was incredible. I felt like it was like the mushroom had a job to do. You know what I mean? Like it had to get my shoulder back in socket. You know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
doctor's not mad at me. I'm not mad at the doctor, but this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
And the experience was absolutely terrifying. And what brought me out of it was my buddy, and he was joking. He didn't know I was going through what I was going through because I've trained enough to where I was keeping it to myself. But it was tough. But at one point, I got up and I put some fire on the firewood on the fire, some firewood on the fire. And he said, he rolls over, looks at me, and said, "Wow, you're able to turn the fire back on." He said, "Do you need a flashlight?" And I said, "No, actually, the last thing I need on the planet is a flashlight. I'd rather have a bouquet of flowers." I said, "But I drag that campfire over there and throw a couple batteries in it if it make you feel better." And we both just bust out laughing and like laughing and crying and screaming. And all of a sudden, the terror was gone. The tooth was pulled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The negative energy was gone. And then I bounced back with this glow that I had as a child. And that to me is what I get out of psilocybin. And I don't feel the need to continue to search. You know what I mean?
Mm. That's powerful, man. Yeah, and you answered one of the other questions that I had, which is like why psilocybin? And it sounds like you experimented and then yeah, it just feels like home and feels like there's a resonance there. And yeah, psilocybin has always had like a very special place in my life and I totally use it in a similar way where it's like when there's some kind of thing that needs to be worked out, I feel like psilocybin is like part of the story of my life. Where other psychedelics, it can be more like about my mind, I guess. But psilocybin feels like it's like walking with you through the journey in a really profound way. And yeah, so it's always been part of the story. So I'm glad you answered that question without me asking. I
Absolutely.
did want to ask you like since you have experience with this like what are some techniques that you have as a sitter? I mean, you said this is private, so if there's something you don't want to share, that's cool, but like
Absolutely.
what are some like techniques you use as a trip sitter, because I think that's an important job that like more people could learn from.
So I have a space in the woods on some land, and there was like an abandoned building there before. And when people come to this space, there's only a handful of people who do come, over and over. Not everybody comes back, right? But I've never had someone who would do this journey and then get up and not say thank you. You know what I mean? Everybody, whether it's rough or not, at this place, under these circumstances, it's difficult not to have a beautiful experience, even if part of it is terrifying, right? So I like to say my analogy for this whole ceremony is within a symbol in front of the fire, deep in the forest to find my mind, right? So we put, my mother had given me quartz crystals. And long ago, I wasn't into crystals. I didn't understand anything about them. They were literally, it was just the same as the mushrooms were at first. It was like, yeah, whatever, cool, crystal. And then a buddy of mine had met us out on tour, and he said, "This is what shamans carry." And he was a Native American, my buddy Pete Sands, and he brought me a quartz crystal, and I kept it just because it was from Pete, and he was a good buddy of mine. It was important. It was a gift. I didn't understand anything about a crystal or really care at that point. And then I carried that crystal with me for a long time, And in 2019, I went to Egypt and I took that crystal into the Great Pyramid. And when we came out, I noticed that the crystal had like a translucent, you could see through it, but it was almost like rainbow, like fish scales inside the crystal that was not previously there. So then I said, you know what? I'm gonna start keeping these on me. And there's been other experiences where we've had like a big crystal in the room, and I went really high dose, and me and my fiance both agreed it felt like there might be some other energy in the room present with us, like almost reacting. But she hadn't taken the mushroom; she was regular.
Mm.
She said shit was kind of crazy.
Mm.
But so anyway, I go out there. My mother had given me three crystals. She gave me a couple more, but I used three. One big one in the front, and then two on the sides, right in front of the fire. And then before we put out air mattresses. One person gets one on the right, one person gets one on the left. There's a good adequate space in between. And the idea is I leave the person completely alone. I don't talk to them. If they desire conversation, I ask them to ask me questions that I will need to respond to. If they make a noise or say, whoa, wow, or oh shit, then I might just, breathe or say, everything okay? Like I don't conversate or try to interrupt what's going on. And some of those people have said, I forgot you were here. And I think that's part of the experience on purpose. Is like I'm there to protect you and make sure you don't choke or, walk off into the forest and get lost. But other than that, this experience is about you. Is when I go through mine, sometimes solo journeys, it's all about me. And it brings me back to, it feels like psilocybin brings me back home. It's like recalibrates my mind from anything that may have hypnotized me throughout society or throughout the
Mm.
world. You know what I mean? Different opinions or things through technology. It's like psilocybin grounds me back to organic intelligence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You unlearn. You
hmm
unlearn as much as you learn.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's part of like yeah, it's like the shedding of stuff. One of my trips on psilocybin felt like that, where it was like, oh, all of that weight, and it was probably similar to what you experienced. Like, I had just gotten off of a tour, a month long tour, and on the U.S. and Canada, and it was just like it was fun, but there was a lot of stress. Like we got turned away at the Canadian border because someone had like an arrest on their record, and then the bandmates start fighting and like pointing fingers, and then the keyboard player quit in the middle of the tour and went home. And so I had all that energy kind of pent up. And, I think I handled it all right, but like still that being around that stress, it's like you wear, there's that like physical embodiment too, where it's like you're just tense. And there was a moment in the psilocybin trip right after I got home where something clicked. I mean, sometimes shedding it is very uncomfortable too, like that process of letting go. There's a part of you, it might be the ego or whatever, that's like holding on for dear life, even if you in your voice in your head are saying like, I want to surrender. There's still something that's like holding on for dear life. And then when it finally broke through, it was just like literally felt like pounds of like weight were off of my shoulder, and I felt this freedom, of like, for me it was in moving in this like intuitive kind of dance type of thing, which I'm not prone to do in my sober state of mind or anything else. And just like letting go of that like inhibition too, it just like that, the freedom and the childlike play that comes with that. All of these things floating around, and intuition, super powerful. Like, I think that is the ultimate thing to be tuned into whenever you are sitting with somebody. One of my like formative experiences with LSD was because I had a good trip sitter, and we were all kids. We were all 18 at the time. One of the things he did was just like sat quietly with me, and he was just like present and showed compassion whenever it was getting like scary. And it
Right.
was that act of compassion that totally flipped the trip around and ended up changing my life. It's like why I'm doing this right now. So it's like that's how important like that presence and that intuition, and he seemed like he knew what he was doing intuitively. So that's what I love about this stuff, is like there's something so ancient and primal about what we're doing that I feel like we're reconnecting with now.
But I think it's like you said. I mean, it's ancient and futuristic, and I mean, we all know. Everybody knows that the mycelium connects the forest and gives information and provides warnings. And I mean, for me, I feel like it would probably do the same thing to the human, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like I guess it's a prayer. I don't like to say prayer because it isn't a religious thing. It's more of an intention or a spiritual thing to the sky. You know what I mean? But it's very much about rebirth, shedding old and embracing new, and invoking the magic within you, and shedding the hypnosis and stepping outside of the trance. And metaphorically being reborn. You know what I mean? That's what it's all about for me. And I take it to nine. The reason why nine is because nine is the bottom dose that I for sure will purge. At nine, I will get it out. And sometimes it's not necessarily physical. You're not throwing up physical things. Sometimes it's sounds and words, and sometimes they sound like other languages. And I feel like, again, I believe it and I don't believe it. But what seems plausible is it's energy. You know what I mean? Maybe energy that's pent up inside you. And I think that seems completely reasonable. But you get this energy out, these blockages, these things that may make you angry. And every time I come to, man, sometimes it's a beautiful, hilarious experience and I laugh for 12 hours. Other times it's terrifying and the laughter brings me out of the terror. But either way, it always brings me back home. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I believe in this as a medicine. And that's about all I believe in. You know what I mean? I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean outside of the mushroom. I just mean with the mushroom ceremony, the rest of it is just a mystery. And,
Right.
and I love that
Right.
about it.
Right. So do you have any like techniques as far as breathing or mindset shift whenever it gets terrifying, or you just strap yourself to the chair and let it happen how it's going to happen? Like what's your approach to that, those moments?
I like to make it a goal to take lessons from the mushroom and implement those in real life. And I guess you could call that integration. But I mean, sometimes the more the deeper you're able to go over time, it feels like those lessons become more literal. You know what I mean? Like more, this is a thing I could actually quantify and say, this is something I have to go do when I get up in the morning, right? And maybe that's my own subconscious mind telling me to do those things. That's a right or wrong thing to do. But as far as like breathing, I mean, I do meditate before I go in, and I try to keep it really simple. I'm just trying to clear my mind. I'm just trying to slow my heart rate, and kind of get centered. Because what you notice when you meditate is you can feel everything going crazy. Once you slow down, you can feel inside your chest, your heart beating, your lungs going. It's like I believe that it helps go into this a lot better if you slow everything that's going on inside first. And I'm no meditation expert. I just breathe and focus on being calm. That's what I do first. And then when I come to, I hold the mushrooms or I hold the tea or however I plan to ingest it, and I read this passage. And then I burn the passage to kind of let that go. And that's really the approach. And then prior to that, I would have set up the two mattresses, put the sheets on those, got the fire ready, and then just lay down and act like you're going to sleep. No music, only nature. There's no roads around to make any noise. It's only nature, and it's pretty incredible. It's like a divine congregation that comes to life specifically at this spot. Like the people
In the
who come here,
forest.
I allow them to not allow them. I'm honored, by the way. Also, like I want people who come here and do this experience to leave a little something behind. Like one of my friends painted a mural, and different people have brought other crystals or helped build the fire pit. It's like everybody who comes here and does this experience and metaphorically dies. You know what I mean? That's what this passage is about. Leave a little piece behind, you know, and give to the space. But the space, I feel like, is growing in being more sacred. Like even the nature surrounding it feels like it's a little more aware that this is going to happen occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you're infusing the environment with the psychedelic vibes.
Absolutely. And
Um,
sometimes you can feel, and I mean, again, this is news to no one, but when things are getting really intense, I'm sure you felt where like the trees are blowing and you know what I mean. A coyote
mhm,
starts screaming when you have an epiphany, and it's like
mhm,
something to that, man.
mhm, mhm.
Something to it. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you again answered one of my other questions that I was going to ask you is like because to me as a musician, and I know you're in the music world too, it's like psychedelics and music have always been like a really fun combination, but I understand the value of not having any music playing and just like absorbing the environment. So it sounds like yeah, you're definitely not having any music, but like do you enjoy it like with lower doses or something like that? Like how do you see music and psychedelics then?
I think music and psychedelics are incredible. I think to each his own. I can see it being a beautiful thing. If that's, I mean, under different circumstances, I would include music. But in this ceremonial space that I have, it's like it is. If I had people playing live, I don't mean like a jam band, you know what I mean, but like
Yeah.
something really cool
Yeah.
going on that was ceremonial, that would be incredible. I'm big on keeping all electronics away, everything electronic,
Mhm.
locked in a box, keys locked up, weapons put away, door to the house is locked, you know what I mean? So anyway, the music has always really done well for me with DMT, with LSD. DMT almost seems like it's mandatory. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It feels like it's a really serious part of the experience. On lower doses in the past, when I'd done lower doses of psilocybin, absolutely. I think music is
Mhm.
incredible. But at that level, sometimes it can even be an interference or it can be something that you don't really know what it is. You're trying to figure out what is that. I can't even wrap my head around what it is supposed to be. You know what I mean? And I think there's something beautiful about the frequency of the nature and the congregation and the clocking in and clocking out of different birds and different
Yeah.
insects. It's like there's really something special to that. And when you lay under that, it by itself feels very healing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like without psychedelics, I can lay out there in that same space on an air mattress and it feels like I feel invigorated when I come back.
Mm. Exactly. Because that's something that we just don't do a lot anyway.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? So we need to tune back in.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And the tricky thing with music is like knowing what's a good fit. Especially if you're in a group. I've been in situations where we're on like a low medium dose of psilocybin and we put some music on, but it's like someone wants to listen to Adele or whatever, and it's like that's not really the vibe I'm feeling right now. Or even if it is just you, just like where are you on the trip? Are you on the come up, on the peak? Like there's different kinds of music that fit that better, and you
Right.
don't always know in the moment like what's a good fit. Like you kind of got to get lucky. I know there's ways you can design that, like some of the researchers that do like the playlists. Like, you ever heard like checked out one of those like psilocybin research study playlists where it's just like a bunch of ambient music and stuff?
I have. And
Mm.
when I used to, before I took my operation completely outside, before I went, like I don't do it inside anymore. I'm trying to figure out how to do it inside. It's just become more electric and more automated. You know what I mean? It can turn up and it can turn down at such a crazy level at those doses that I'm very careful about being inside. But you had asked about the playlist. Yeah, I've listened to a couple and I like them. This is strange. But for some reason, when I do listen to music inside on psilocybin, I really only listen to Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix. And it's like very selective, like the psychedelic era, because they had the
Mhm.
alcohol, Coke era, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's a very specific era. I have a Led Zeppelin playlist with a couple Jimi Hendrix records in there. That's really all I can listen to. I don't know why. I'm not big on um, words when I'm in that place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they feel very influential. So I have also a Sufi meditation playlist. that I resonate better with just the instruments when I'm that far into my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the common things about those kind of playlists is that they try to stay instrumental because
Hmm.
having words, it's like a different mode of consciousness. Like the talking part of the brain is a different level than that intuitive space. Um, yeah, Jimi Hendrix. I listened to Jimi Hendrix tripping before, and like he's just amazing, man. Like to me, Jimi Hendrix is like the ultimate symbol of freedom.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely.
dude was totally free, and that probably scared a lot of people back in the day too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to add to our music conversation, I won't give away too much right now because we're in the early stages. But me and Yellow Wolf are working on. He's going to produce it, but it's essentially you could call it a trip tape. It'll be about 4 hours long, and it's going to be a journey and something that you could play while in this space. And I'm going to
Mm.
make sure that the vibe, it will go through a dark side. There'll be a lot of really, really, really cool creative stuff on this. Again, I don't want to give away too much because it's early, but it's something to be excited about. So
Nice,
we're
man.
designing something, yeah.
Cool. So you're thinking this would be something appropriate for like your 9 gram plus.
I think so. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, if it's not, I'm going to keep chipping away. You know what I mean? It has to be. By the time it's done, that is the goal. But it would also be one of those things where it would be someone who maybe didn't have access to what I have access to. You know what I mean? The land and the lack of traffic and noises outside, things like that. But yes, it will be fully adaptable to a 9 gram or higher journey. It's going to purposely be something that takes you through in and out vibes, keeps you in certain vibes long enough. I remember listening to Stairway to Heaven for 4 hours one time.
Oh
I
wow.
just had to keep listening to it because
Yeah.
the vibe. I just needed to stay in that vibe.
Yeah. No, there is something about that, especially that part where it starts shifting towards the middle, where it's like, dun, 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 dun,
Hmm.
dun, dun. There's something like warm about the way that guitar sounds that like I can see it as like this psychedelic, that like heart opening warmth that you get in those really good euphoric moments where it's like
Absolutely.
this warm like love open heart kind of energy.
Same thing on Whole Lot of Love. That breakdown on
Mm.
Whole Lot of Love.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That's crazy. That's
yeah,
one of my favorites.
nice. I
Yeah.
have to try listening to Led Zeppelin. I haven't ever done that tripping, but yeah, big
Psychedelic
big Led
eras. That's the
Zeppelin fan.
key. It
Yeah.
starts to get into the crazy, crazy, upbeat stuff, and I got to switch it. But I mean, I love
Mm-hmm.
it on a regular frequency. You know what I mean? But in that headspace,
Right.
psychedelic Led Zeppelin is
So
is
would that
crazy.
be like the first two records or something like that? First two or three, or is it just certain songs?
Certain songs. I actually have
Yeah.
a playlist I'll send to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin
For sure.
playlist.
For sure. Yeah, I'd love that, man.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um. So yeah, and let me know if you got to go at any point, man.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Okay.
chilling.
Cool.
I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, man. Me too. So when you work with people,
Hmm.
I'm curious about what are some of the things that you see people coming to you with? Like, why are they seeking this experience out? And then what are some of the common outcomes that you see? Like you mentioned, everyone says thank you. So it's some kind of value. But yeah, like what are kind of like some threads of people that come to you?
Well, when they say, let me say this first. When they say thank you, I say thank you back. One, because I feel like it makes me happy to be able to share this experience with people I care for. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy, like knowing something so incredible exists that one, the mushroom feeds my soul, and then I go implement these lessons, and it's my goal to come back to the mushroom. Like, I'm speaking metaphorically here, not to sound too off my rocker, but come back to make the mushroom proud. You know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
implemented those lessons. Now I'm back. What else you got?
Yeah,
Then the experience just gets bigger, and it's like you have new levels, and you're allowed here, and come around back. We're having a cookout,
totally.
smoking a cigar. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
but I mean, people It's just been a couple really close people to me who, I mean, I'm speaking for them, but some people have said they've seen my growth. You know what I mean? One of the things that it helped me stop was I used to drink a lot, and I wasn't the type to wake up and drink every day. I was the type that when I did drink, I would black out and just act stupid. And I never woke up the next day and said, "Man, I'm sure glad I drank and blacked out last night." You know what I mean? It was never a positive thing.
Yeah.
And mushrooms literally stripped that from me. But I'm not a sober person. I can have a glass of wine or toast champagne, or you know what I mean. If the occasion calls for it, I'm equipped. I can have a drink. But I literally lost the taste completely. You know what I mean? I don't even desire to ever. And there's 100 different things. Biting my fingernails, I bit them my whole life. Mushrooms helped me stop doing that. Um, and people have seen my growth and my ability to tolerate, in the, how do you say it? You're a touring musician, like when you get somewhere, the promoter might be the coolest person you ever met, or they might have had the worst day ever, and they're projecting that energy on you. And it's not always like that, but it's a grab bag of emotions and psychology, state to state. You know what I mean? Venue to venue, and even it might be easier if it was all negative. It might be easier if it was all positive. It's the psychological juggling of emotions, and you got to smile now, and now you got a problem with this guy over here, and it's just seeing how I'm able to kind of diffuse situations and talk sense into people without getting angry, and it's definitely come with mushrooms.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I used to be, and I don't say this proudly, but I would be the first person to have a problem with someone. You know what I mean? If they had an attitude or something like that. Now, I wouldn't let anyone disrespect anyone in our company, our team, our bus, anything like that. But I would do my best always, first and foremost, to diffuse completely and make a new friend. You know what I mean? And that's through the mushrooms. And I believe that some of these people have seen my growth, you know what I mean? And want to take part and have heard me say, "Hey man, I promise, like, yes, if you come with me into the kitchen and we're preparing the brew, you know what I mean, preparing the tea, I won't look you in the eye." And it took me a while to realize why. I'm like kind of fidgety and I'm kind of nervous, and I realized I'm scared to death. You know what I mean? I'm scared to death. I don't want to look you in the eye. And it took me literally a long time to realize. I was like, man, why do I act so funny in the kitchen? But now I know why, because everybody says, well, I'm scared. I'm scared. Well, what do you do if you're scared? Face your fears. I mean, I'm scared right now for the next time. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I think that that's part of the courage. That's part of the growth. That's part of the reward is facing your fears. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
again, I tell people you don't want to, like, I go to the mushroom when I really need consultation, not when I'm looking for a spa day. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I don't advise that for someone who's just figuring out this journey or dipping their toe in the water. You know what I mean? I think go in with a really positive headspace, make sure you're in a good place, make sure you're safe and have a sitter. But as you grow and as you train, things may shift and evolve. And that's a good thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a long project.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's people are noticing the change, and man, I've got 3 people who come back every couple months and literally have their intentions, and they'll come tell me like, hey man, I've been working on this, I've been doing this, I threw out all those clothes, I signed up to the boxing gym, I've been holding my buddy accountable, and we're taking real life things and coming back to the mushroom,
Yeah.
you know? Like real things that you can quantify and say, yes, this is actually taking place, and the idea was sparked laying on that mattress in front of that fire.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And it reminds me what you said earlier about how like making the mushroom proud. Like I've experienced that exact same thing where it's like sometimes I'll even avoid coming back to the mushroom until I know I've like done my homework.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's one of the interesting things about DMT is kind of like this too, and mushrooms they're both tryptamines. Arguably, they're like the same realm or parallel or close to each other. And that's one of the built-in things with the tryptamines, with psilocybin and DMT, mostly is that like if you go back in and you haven't done the integration or like taking those lessons into your life, like it'll let you know.
It will let you know, man.
Yeah.
It's like a grandfather grabbing you by the shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the most loving but toughest energy ever.
Mm.
And I know exactly what you're saying, and that's a good practice to come back once you've honestly implemented. I mean, I've done it before where I had everything planned, blown up the mattress, ready to go, took the next day off, got all the way out here and said, "Not tonight."
Mm.
That happened to me the night before I left to New Zealand. Like I explained to you how I needed to get that energy out of me, and the night before, the night before, I had fully planned to go and do this by myself for the reasons we discussed earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and then I couldn't do it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. There was a lot going on, and crazy news. Just everything was going crazy, and it was like, man, my head's not in the right space in a bad way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to at least calibrate my mind to go face this fears.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was able to, and I'm very thankful. It took the next day, but it was 14 hours before I actually boarded a flight to New Zealand. So I
Mm-hmm.
was driving. I watched the sunrise on the highway. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And then jumped on a flight to New Zealand and went to the welcome ceremony. It was insane. But it was all to get that negative energy out. And that's
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
Yeah, man. I mean, that can seem hardcore from the outside, but it's like if you're really about it, that's the way to go. Especially when you have this like system around it too. It's not like you're going willy nilly, like, oh, let me go to a random spot in the forest.
Right.
It's like you have your whole setup.
Right.
Yeah, and I love the thing about mushrooms is that the people who love mushrooms are so about it, like there's a whole like lifestyle, like, Dennis, he's like embracing the mycelial ethos of like connecting everybody, connecting people, and this like this feeling of like sharing, and we're all propping each other up instead of like competing. And I just think that's such a cool thing that I see with mushroom enthusiasts, is that it's like they embrace those like mushroom like qualities.
I agree. And there's something in my passage I'm comfortable sharing with you, but it's about the psychic mycelial network that's above ground that brings together those who share the same frequency. To your point, like you just defined what it is I just said.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I feel like there's something above ground that I was in a I was in a restaurant at the Sunset Marquis in Los Angeles, and a journalist came to interview Yellow Wolf, and they brought this drink. I can't remember the name of the drink, but it was a mushroom drink, and they gifted it to me. They know I like mushrooms, so they gave me this mushroom drink. I popped it, went to drink it. I said something something mushrooms, and all of a sudden, like there's this wall, and his head peeks out, and it's this guy. He said, "Somebody say mushrooms," and he's my buddy Brian, and he's like, from that moment on, we've been friends. And it was just, you know what I mean? He was behind the
Yeah.
wall, heard the word mushroom, and then, for the rest of the evening, we were hanging out and checking out mushrooms and talking mushrooms. And it was just crazy because it all started with this drink about mushrooms. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I wouldn't even have said the word mushroom. So it's kind of like to our point. You know what I mean? But that
Yeah.
happens to me all the time. And to your point, Dennis, one of my favorite people is, man, he's killing it. Just like you
Mm-hmm.
said, connecting everybody and the comedy he's bringing to the Renaissance is incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what's cool too is that like we're realizing, as far as like the science and stuff goes, how mushrooms are really the thing running the show. Like I think there you've probably seen that not a documentary, but it was like a mushroom Netflix thing. I think Stamets was in it. It came out like three,
That's
four. Yes,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah, I saw that was a good one.
yeah. And one of the things is basically saying how the entire ecosystem is relying on the fact that it has this network of like sharing all these nutrients and stuff. So I think it's just this really cool, profound synchronicity that like not only do mushrooms kind of run the show as far as just nature in general, but then they have this, psilocybin mushrooms have this ability to regulate us on the above ground level. So it's like not only are they underground, but like you said, it's like they're actually doing the same thing up here. And that's just sick. That's just that's what I love about this stuff is like all this. That's the mystery right there.
The mystery. And I think
Yeah.
it's like, inviting something else I do is invite entities of a non-physical realm that are only positive. You know what I mean? I make it a point to state that if there is such a thing as a non-physical entity and they're going to partake in this situation that I'm partaking in, then I want to only invite those of a positive nature with positive intentions. And again, rebirth is a very, very serious, reoccurring piece,
Hmm.
of my intention. And I think it's just to your point, to shed everything you've accumulated from last time. You know what I mean? Your ship continues to go down through the water, and you accumulate new barnacles.
Yeah.
And it's important to have some ability to get those off. I don't think mushrooms necessarily have to be the answer for everybody, but I do believe that in the current society we live in, you have to have some way. You know what I mean? Whether it's meditation or exercise or some crazy fasting or diet or who knows, there's so many things you could do, but a way to shed that, and metaphorically be reborn, and bask in that sense of I am being reborn. I'm a new version of myself. I accept that and I feel the power in that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I mean, to me, creative expression is like a big part of that too. Like it's like not only do you shed the barnacles during the experience and in the days following, but it's like if you can make some kind of creative expression that resonates with that, that's like it's even further down the process. So it sounds like you a musician too.
No, I'm a
No.
manager. I
Okay,
manage
but it
art.
sounds like you like you write a little bit.
I definitely do stream of
Yeah.
consciousness. I have a
Yeah.
couple books that I'm working on. They're nonfiction, obviously. Yeah, one of them is something I work on. Me and my fiance have been working on for probably 5 years, on and off. It's not a continuous thing. It's whenever the time is right and it feels right. But she'll sit with me when I go high dose and wait till the right time, and we'll accumulate questions. We'll make questions that make sense that I can answer at a certain point. You know what I mean? And the next day I'll journal. So yes, I write. I'm
Yeah.
working on a couple books that may take a while, but my goal is for them to be valuable information and not just a quick turnaround for a product.
Yeah, yeah. So is that gonna be having to do with the ceremonies, or just kind of like,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's called the one book that we've been working on for some years now is Hello from Another Lifetime, Psychedelic Archaeology, or the Understanding of Psychospiritual, I'm sorry, I'm butchering the end of it, Psychospiritual Understanding. Psychedelic archaeology is the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to this place and pulling ideas out and then analyzing those ideas. Journaling, free, how do you say it? Where you just journal as you go, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Stream of consciousness.
yeah.
So
Like,
stream of consciousness, journaling on the topics that were brought to the surface by mushrooms, and
mm-hmm,
then she'll take them, analyze them, and like see if there's any science attached to it or anything
mm-hmm.
other interesting that we need to speak on it.
That's super interesting. Yeah, because one of the first things that I engaged with when I was having a mushroom experience, and this is like the most viewed video on my channel, is this trip report. Is I went into it saying I want to connect with my ancestors, because I feel like a lot of us are cut off, especially in America. It's like I know who my great grandparents are, but that's it. Where do they come from? Like what is there, like what's the lineage to like draw from? And so I go into the mushroom trip, my first Terrence McKenna style 5 gram experience. And I was like, I want to connect with my ancestors. And that's what it did. And it gave me some new information that I had to interpret later, having to do with alchemy. And whenever I saw, like when I asked about the ancestors, I saw a vision of alchemists working on creating the philosopher's stone, which is like something I actually saw in my mind's eye, and then it's been like this current that I followed ever since then. And then it made me realize that alchemy was like almost like ancestral tradition, the way that shamanism might be for a Native American, and it's like that's like it's this spiritual lineage that I could tap into. And then the mushroom showed that to me. It wasn't even something I was interested in, It's like that's the archaeology, right?
No, that's absolutely beautiful, and I love that you brought up ancestors. If I can tell you about, so the mural that my buddy Ryan painted is called "We Are the Hands of Our Ancestors," and it's abstract, and it has hands like this, and it has more hands. I'll show you a picture of it. It has more hands like this, and some eyes floating around and stuff. But at one point in the trip, he was standing up, I was sitting down, and he told me that he saw my grandfather. He said, "Man, your ancestors are really proud that your lineage is in their hands." And obviously, I was extremely thankful to hear this, whether it was a hallucination or whatever. It was all just good mojo, right? But he said he saw my grandfather and what was probably my aunts and grandmother, and just surrounded by women who were obviously family. And he said, "Man, they're strong out here. They're really strong." And so my mother passed away a little over 2 years ago now. So I took on Christmas morning, just to add her vibe to the place. Christmas morning at sunrise, I put a little bit of her ashes in the ground, and I put one of the big quartz crystals she gave me on top of that. And it's kind of where the moonlight hits when it comes through. So it's like there's a lot of mojo going on, and ancestors are definitely a part of this whole thing, And I think that's interesting you said that, because the intentions, man, I've thought about that when the intention that I've written, it's a long intention. It's not just the one we've discussed several times. It's not like a 1, 2, 3 or anything. It's like it takes about 10 minutes to read. And it I didn't even mean for it to, but it definitely is very heavy on the idea of rebirth. And every single person who comes into this experience after reading that intention, that's the report back. So I've thought recently about rewriting different intentions, like different experiences. You know what I mean? Like that's a great intention. We'll save that one for now. We were reborn last time. Now let's come back and focus on our ancestors, as you mentioned, or other things that you may need to navigate. And I think that's interesting too, because it's like tuning to other radio stations. You know what I mean? And different flavors or different classes
Mm-hmm.
under the umbrella of psilocybin.
Yeah, no, because it's so wide reaching,
Yeah.
like it can go anywhere.
Right.
But there are those themes that keep popping back up, like rebirth is a big one, ancestors is a big one, personal psychological stuff, of course. Um, yeah, the rebirth thing is like that's classic, like especially if you haven't had that experience ever before. I feel like that's like got to be one of the first ones that you have.
Absolutely.
Um, Especially as like an adult, like that's we've had more time to collect the barnacles, and I was lucky to have this rebirth experience at 18 years old, and even then that was like there was a lot that I had to get rid of, like a lot of a lifetime of learning ideas that don't really serve me, and in the psychedelic that book that Tim Leary wrote, the psychedelic manual. You know which one I'm talking about? It's
I don't
like
think I've read that one.
yeah, it was like in 1965 or 66, and they took the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is about like how a soul plans to reincarnate,
Oh
where
wow.
it's like you set it up this way and then you do all of this so that the soul can reincarnate and be reborn. And he basically just like slapped the psychedelic experience. He modeled it after that, so that
Wow.
it would be like a model of your own rebirth. And so I feel like that goes to what you're talking about, that like one of the earliest manuals of psychedelics in like our society was about being reborn.
Wow. No, that's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like how often, if you've already had it once, how often do you need to be reborn, do you think, or is there no
I
way to
mean,
actually say that?
well, no, I mean, I feel like it's a state of mind. You know what I mean? More than anything, like using the term, and I'm saying this more for the people watching, but using the term reborn is extremely metaphorical. You know what
Mm.
I mean? And it's like I can accumulate a bunch of hypnotic ideas in 2 weeks from the reality we currently live in. You know what I mean? Whether it's the stress that's on the TV in the background while I'm ordering Jersey Mike's, or the sad song that's playing in the Uber I get into. You know what I mean? It's like, or the many things that we encounter throughout life. The guy that flips you off because you got in front of him so you could turn to your house. You know what I mean? Like different things like this. You accumulate these little tiny things that start to make life seem heavy. You know what I mean? And I feel like take you further from home. And for me, I mean, if I had it my way and I was free and I didn't have, the things that I have to do to make a living in life and things like that,
Hmm.
I would 100% commit to once every 2 weeks.
Mm.
You know what I
Wow.
mean? And 9 gram bottom, but let me see, sorry about that. Depending on how I'm feeling, I might go up. You know what I mean? I would usually stop at about 14. I've done up to 20, but it just depends on the situation, the mushroom, you know what I mean? That type of thing. Yeah, man.
Mm.
It's the rebirth, it can be constant. I mean, it's like
Hmm.
on tour, we say happy birthday, all day
Mm.
long. And it's we have a birthday cake at the end of every show. Every show. You know what I mean? And even if it's been a rough night, everybody smiles and lights up when it's time to sing happy birthday.
Mm.
Right? And it's because today's the first day of the rest of your life. When you wake up in the morning, you're reborn. You have a chance to do everything fresh and new. So my crazy breakdown of finding my mind every 2 weeks, I believe it helps me. I mean, everybody around me seems to be happy with the way I treat them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm not in any trouble.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm doing is going pretty smooth,
Yeah.
and it seems to be going smoother when I integrate this into my life.
Right.
I feel
Right.
good about it.
Cool. So you don't. I was doing some reading about like the Beatles' psychedelic era, and
Mhm.
one of the things that happened with John Lennon was that he tripped so frequently, but I think he was doing it like every day, and it was LSD, which is like 12 hours. So it's like you're living in that state. And
Yeah, he was living in it.
yeah, and back then, we didn't have a lot of the best practices because it was still also new to everybody. But one of the things is that it's almost like he needed a certain amount of ego to like even have confidence. So like, do you have any thoughts about that? Like where, because it sounds like if you have enough of these like these experiences, it's like your ego is in a healthy level. It's not like it's gone, but it's like at a healthy lean ego is how I like to think of it. Like Bruce Lee lean as opposed to like overdone. So I was just thinking about that recently. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like if someone does it too much, maybe they like lose confidence, or they like they have like derealization or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something to be. You kind of have to gauge your own ability, right? Like, I've I've went down a path of certain reading that was very deep, and realized at a certain point, wait a minute, maybe I should um, pivot to some self help instead of some of this deeper spiritual stuff. Like I'm definitely getting a little deep, and I live in this society that doesn't necessarily coincide properly with that. So it's like you just have to be careful. You have to gauge yourself. I have felt before, like, you know what? I'm gonna skip this week. I'm not gonna do it now. I kind of lean on my intuition. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
It's like it hasn't served me wrong yet. I've also been in bed before on a Tuesday night when I had to be at work Wednesday morning at 2 in the morning, and got up and said, I got to do 9 grams right now.
Wow.
And I'm not sure why, but I have to. Went in the bathroom, did it, and I was thankful I did. You know what
Mm.
I mean? Yeah, so I do believe certain people, depending on their mind, you know what I mean? I feel the need to touch on this real quick, but like my girl says this may have a part of why I'm able to do this. Maybe not. It's just a theory, just an idea. But when I was 17, I had something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I was completely paralyzed. I, I mean, I couldn't close my eyes. I couldn't move my toes. They had to wet my tongue so it didn't dry up and fall out. You know what I mean? Like I was completely paralyzed, had to learn how to walk again. So I like to attribute that to, maybe like a practice in strengthening my mind. You know what I mean? But like I've always been pretty good at knowing when it's time to pump the brakes on a
Mm-hmm.
situation. You know what I mean? And that's important because I do believe, I mean, you can become detached from reality. Reality as we know it functions in a certain manner. And while you're within it, you kind of got to follow the rules to a certain extent, or there's consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to your point, I mean, I wouldn't do any psychedelic any day, but I mean, maybe John Lennon gets a pass. You know what I mean? Because he's John Lennon. But the average person, I mean, yeah, probably not the best idea. And then mushrooms, as you know, you would build a tolerance, and they would lose their magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I wouldn't have time to integrate and, as we said, make the mushroom proud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we say that loosely because it could be within, without. The idea is coming back, like I did that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Here's the results. Here's the fruits.
Right.
What other
Right.
lessons do you have?
Right.
So I think a part of the break is the respect. It's like when you go to the
Yeah.
gym, you don't want to work out every muscle group all 7 days. You need to take a break so your muscles will grow.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Even creativity is like that, where it's like, we're stuck on this song. Let's just step away for a little while. And then when you come back, it's like, boom. It's like your brain is cooking stuff when you're not actively thinking about it. We think we're like in the driver's seat a lot of the time, but there's all of this unconscious stuff that goes on. And that takes time, it's like stuff's got to simmer.
Right. Right. It's
Yeah.
like we're an antenna. It's like you have to allow it to come through. Like creativity a lot. I mean, you've noticed like sometimes movies that are very similar come out at the same time, the same
Mm,
idea or different products, or I feel like sometimes these ideas are floating around and different people at different creative levels bring them through them. So you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, creativity is hard to clock in and clock out of,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and that's all the best artists. It feels like that. Like Jimi Hendrix, the dude was channeling. Like that's one of the things I love about Jimi Hendrix too is that like it felt like he was a shaman in a certain way. Where, yeah, maybe you don't label it exactly like that, but I felt like he was channeling this energy and then bringing it out in such a way that it's like no one could deny it. It's like even me as like a 12-year-old listening to his stuff, like I would listen to Jimi Hendrix falling asleep on my CD player, and it was like my first psychedelic experience, being like half asleep and then hearing like some like trippy like swirling Jimi Hendrix studio sounds, and it's like even me not having touched a psychedelic, it's like he took me into that world, and that's like so shamanic that he was able to
Beautiful.
do that.
Right, right. And I
Yeah.
think to your point, there's a way to say that a thing is shamanic without it
Mhm.
being that that's what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Right, like it's like a function, a shamanic
Yeah.
function.
I mean, playing a
Yeah.
drum tribally could be a shamanic act. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you have to be a shaman to do it.
For sure.
I just think that
For
word's
sure.
been thrown around real loosely.
No, yeah. It totally. Yeah. Um so one last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up was you're very much doing this underground, like you're just doing it like, and I respect that a lot, like that you're just doing it because it's right. And it's like, obviously, the world on the outside and the laws like haven't caught up to what we know is the right thing. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is like, as someone in the underground doing this, what kind of future would you imagine where things are above ground, or do you think it should still be like the model you're doing, and then that's okay?
I'm just a big fan of respect for the mushroom, man. And I know it's you have to have a taste for this stuff to fully understand what that means, right? Like I think anything done with the proper respect and with the object in mind to move this whole beautiful thing forward. Once it becomes a money grab, I know people aren't going to like me saying that, but once it becomes a money grab, to me, it's going against the grain of what it truly stands for. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that people can't make a living. If this is what you're doing and you're healing people, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that
Yeah.
there's not a way to make a living, but there's, price gouging and people who don't truly know what they're doing and squeezing as many people in as they can, you know what I mean? Like, so my thoughts are it would be beautiful and incredible if it was legal and you didn't have to worry about any, legal repercussions dealing with this, that would be beautiful, man. It's just once it gets into the point of patenting something natural and you know what I mean? It's we know how this can go. We've seen it with cannabis to a certain extent, but it's like just want to be careful with it, man, and respect it and hold it high. You know what I mean? Like, and if that means hiding in the woods and doing it, low key to keep the reverence and the respect, I would trade that off for sure than having the ability to go to Quick Sack and get a little thing of gummies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's important that it's held in high regard and highly respected, and people learn to respect it more like it was in ancient times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And when it comes to like business practices and stuff like that, I mean, I think nature is the model for it. It's like with the mycelial network and stuff. It's like it's not. It's like maybe the mushroom is getting something, but it's also giving. There's a value add, and I think where a lot of the problems go when it comes to like greed and things like that is when it's this extraction. And it's like you're not giving where the a good business is about like giving value and then you get in exchange for something truly valuable that you give to people.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's, it almost feels like I know this is not something that could be implemented, but it almost feels like, with the ability to have a business license or own a company that facilitates any kind of psychoactive mushroom, I feel like everybody involved should have taken part. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's not a thing that's going to be implemented. I'm fully aware that that's unrealistic, but it seems fair. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
No, because that's, I mean, pretty early on with the like researchers in the 50s, like some of the first studies they were doing on psychedelics in like Canada um, with these psychiatrists. Because did you know like the history of like way back in the 50s, they called psychedelics psychomimetics because they thought that it was a way to like induce schizophrenia. Like they thought that psychedelics were actually just giving people schizophrenia. And
Wow.
so they were going to take psychedelics as a way like, oh, let's take these so we can be schizophrenic and understand our schizophrenic like patients, our psych in our psychiatry ward. But then pretty soon after that, they realized like, oh, that's not what this is. This is something like joyous and beautiful and healing. And so that's when they started doing like the therapy side of it. And really early on, like even in the 50s, those first therapists realized like, hey, if you're going to be giving this to someone, you have to have done it. Like they figured that out. And that was like in the very very early stages because yeah, it's one of those things once you've been inside, it's like there's absolutely no way that you can even explain that. You
Yeah,
just
and to your point, you can't truly comfort someone who's going through it. You know what I mean? You can be there for them, and maybe if you're their mother or their brother or their husband or whatever, maybe then you could comfort them more than most. But if you're a trip sitter and you've never ever experienced that feeling, I mean I don't know that you can truly do that properly. You know what I mean? I had an experience not long ago with a close friend of mine, like my sister, and she was on her mattress and she was going through it. And occasionally we'll say, "You okay? Yup. You okay? Yup. All right, cool." And then I didn't hear a reply. And then it was like, "I need you. I need you." And it was basically like, "I'm dying. I keep dying. I keep coming back. I keep coming back. Talk for me. Talk, please. Hold me down. When you don't speak, I'm gonna die." And it was getting really, really crazy. And man, I attribute this to the mushroom, but I had taken 9 grams too. And this was at the peak of the experience. This is when it was really, really crazy. And when it came time to have to go over there and hold her down and be like, "Hey, I'm talking. And I kept saying, keep dying, die again, please die again. And then I said, this happened to be on a full moon. And I noticed, I'll take it, I'll get weird sometimes. But the moon was like shining down on her. And I said, now this is intuitive. I didn't say this on purpose. I didn't plan to say this. It just happened. When I saw that, I said, die again, please continue to die over and over and over and over. And then I said, now bask in the light of the full moon and please be reborn. And she goes, oh my God, brother, you there? Like came to when I said, and please be reborn. And was fine after that. And somehow I was able to go almost be completely normal and say, I got you. Everything's good. I'm holding you down. You know what I mean? It was like, it's magical, man. It's magical. Like when you tap in and it's like the mushroom had my back right then. You know, it was like, all right, you need to do your work right now. You need to go hold this down and make sure everybody's okay. And then I went right back to it. The automation turned me back up. You know what I mean? Went lay on my mattress and finished my journey.
That is insanely powerful. That gave me the goosebumps, bro. That's
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know stuff like that can really happen. And there it is again. There's a mystery. There's a magic. Like there's almost no point in trying to explain it because it's
No.
just too much.
Right. And it felt like some kind of like ancient initiation or something crazy. Like it was, I'm halfway playing, but it really felt so magical and so otherworldly that it didn't make any sense. Like you said, you
Yeah.
just kind of got to bask in it, enjoy
Yep.
it in the moment, and tell the legend later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, man, that's thanks for sharing all of that, man. And
Absolutely.
I
Thank you.
really appreciate you, and it was cool to link up. This is one of the first times that I've ever done like a kind of a blind podcast like this, where I didn't have some idea of like what we were gonna talk about. Besides when me and you hopped on the phone, and I got a quick idea of what you do.
Yeah.
And it was like last night. I got a download of like all these potential questions based on just the 3 minutes that we talked. It gave me enough to like think of some, because I like to do like a free flowing conversation, but I also like to have some questions, just like little bullet points that if I get to, and a lot of the time, like what happened, you'll get to them anyway, and I don't even have to bring it up. Um, and that's, yeah, I just got a download the night before, and I'm really glad that we can make it happen, man. It was really cool to
Dude,
talk
you
to you.
you killed it, man, and whatever your approach was, it was incredible. Because I'm also a fan of like more of a conversation. Like we're two people with a certain, we practice a certain thing, we think a certain way, and we're here to have a dope conversation. So this is my style of how this goes. So
Absolutely,
appreciate
man.
it,
Well,
brother.
yeah, let's stay in touch for sure, man.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. I'll see you soon.
All right, peace.